Hi, everyone. Welcome back to She Podcast. Today's guest is Sara Brooke. Hi, Sara.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thanks for having me.
So, can you tell our listeners when you first realized you wanted to become an author?
Sure. It was probably in 2012. I was walking through a bookstore and was very frustrated because at the time I couldn't find any books that I actually wanted to buy for a flight I had. And so something in me was just like, it's time to start writing. I'd always wanted to write books, but the idea of getting them published and how hard it was pretty difficult before, the advent of electric publishing or electronic publishing. So after that experience in the bookstore, I actually spoke with somebody who I know, and he mentioned to me that you can now publish on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and in other ways on your own electronically. So that was like enough to get me to start writing. Surprisingly, I had never written a book in my life, and at that moment, I wrote a book in 4 months. So it was pretty crazy, but it's kind of like the power of telling yourself that you can do anything you want. It really kind of broke down the barrier that I had of writing a novel when I knew that I could entertain the masses without having to like spend years trying to get an agent and a publisher and all of that. And surprisingly enough, I did get a publisher after my book had been published by myself. So I indie published it. And then I found a publisher who wanted to publish it and was like, you have to change this, you have to change that. The book gives away the story. Like, good point. I pulled the story down. So the book came down 2 weeks after I had self-published it, believe it or not. And then after that, it's kind of since that time, since 2012, I've been published 10 times, maybe 11 times. Actually, between 10 to 15 times if you consider short stories and things like that. And I'm currently working on my next book. And I don't care what anybody says. It never gets easier. When you start a new story, it's like, got to focus on the characters, got to focus on the plot, got to focus on the story. And I get writer's block just like everybody else does. And so actually, in honor of you, I started really kind of gearing up this book a little bit more today. I had stopped writing. I got COVID in December, so I stopped writing in December. It's been like several months since I got on the laptop and kind of fired up the story, but back on track now, and in honor of you, because today was
like That's cool. That's cool. I do like the themes of your book. I love love horror. Like that's my stuff. I love horror. People always say that. They're like, "You really like horror, don't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So yeah, I really love it. I love the themes. So can you tell us who or what inspired you to write?
Sure. I've always read scary books, horror books. In fact, when I was very young, kind of like, I don't know, 10, 11, my parents would take me to this really old shopping mall in Miami that is not open anymore, unfortunately, but there was a bookstore there, and my mother would be like, oh, we're going to go like shopping. You stay in the bookstore. And I would literally sit on the floor in the bookstore surrounded by books, reading scary books, like, like, oh, this looks good, like mystery, horror, all that kind of stuff. I wasn't in the romance section. I wasn't in the Sweet Valley High section, like all my friends. I just love reading, and I've loved reading since I was old enough to know how to read. And so that inspired me, and there aren't many women who write in the horror genre. There's more of us now, and they're wonderful women, a lot of them whom I've met or read myself. But I really wanted to write something that I enjoy reading and watching. I love watching scary movies too.
Me too.
And I'll tell you, I had a lot of people really pushing me to publish and to go after my dream. Some of them have since passed away, which is really sad. We've lost some people in the writing industry, writing world, but others are still alive and still continue to pressure me when I have writer's block. So I would say it's a combination of having a very sick, twisted, creative mind, I guess. I'm normal day to day, but when it's like when I write my stories, oh, my creativity and my imagination go crazy, and it's a really cool outlet for that. So I think it's a mixture of always liking horror when I was younger, loving loving to watch scary movies when I was babysitting my sister and brother on weekends, and then enjoying the books themselves. Like I obviously am a fan of like Stephen King and Bentley Little and others who really have such a mastery of the craft. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, I don't think I'll ever be as good as those guys are, but I do have readers who enjoy what I write about. And that makes me feel really good. So the entertaining people, giving them something they don't expect, kind of
Mhm.
shocking them sometimes. Those are all kinds of things that I enjoy. I know. It's like
Mhm.
my parents are like, couldn't you write about my grandmother when she was alive? Rest her soul. Read one of my books that's about sexual torture and crazy families. Like, why couldn't you write about? She was Russian and she passed. She's, why couldn't you write about something normal? And so kind of the
Like
right way.
romance, like romance and lovey-dovey dolls and stuff.
Yeah.
So, so can you tell our listeners a little bit about your book, the Island and the Marsh, both of them?
Sure. So, The Island is a horror novel that came out last year. It is about a group of adult couples that go to an island for the weekend. It's the first time that this island has been utilized for couples. Basically they can go and spend time on the beach and drink and enjoy great food. And it was purchased from the Bahamian government because the Bahamian government couldn't do anything with this island because it's
Mhm.
cursed. So they sold it to this big private equity firm and said, oh, they sold it at a discount. And the people at the private equity firm never believed in like paranormal or hauntings or cursings or places being cursed or what have you. So they set up this island just to make money, right? Just to have these rich couples come out and spend money to have like a weekend away. And these couples go and spend time on this island, and things go terribly awry because there is a witch who has cursed and who also haunts the island. So it's a scary story, and a lot of people die, which tends to happen in my books. Um, but it was really fun to write because I'm actually a huge fan of the Bahamas. I've been to the Bahamian Islands many, many times. So I'm very familiar with the people of the Bahamas. I'm really familiar with the islands. I used to swim competitively years ago, and I'm friendly with a lot of the people who live there because I used to swim in competitions against them. So it was very close to my heart. Plus, I love the islands, period. I'm not a city girl. I like, beach, palm trees. I like quiet and the sound of the ocean. So it was really fun to write. I've had a lot of people read the book, lots of interesting reviews. Some people hate it, some people love it. My readers who have been reading me for 6, 7, 8 years, they really enjoyed it, and I have a lot of new readers because of that book. So if you're interested in a haunted story about an island and being in the middle of the Atlantic and stranded and all kinds of crazy things happen, that's definitely a book for those folks who are interested in that.
Yeah,
And
that one.
yeah, it's I love it. I tell you, Brooke, like, it was one of the most fun books for me to write, and it was so sad when I had to end it. I could have been writing it forever because it was such a great story to me anyway. But I'm really excited that people are reading it. I'm really excited that people are enjoying it. And even, if you have like, well, I would have done this different or that different, the fact that you gave it a chance and you're reading it means a lot to
Mhm.
me.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's the book that came out last year. I come out with a book pretty much every 2 years. I try to release every 2 years now. It's not 4 months anymore because there's a lot going on in my life, and it's not to just write in 4 months. I have some other stuff too, like with some of my books. I have people trying to adapt them to a different media to film, and that's been a long road because of COVID. But we'll talk about that, I guess, at some point.
oh
But
yeah.
the other, sorry, you have a redhead on your program, so we like to talk. Uh, so the other one that you kindly brought up, In the Marsh, you're actually the first interview I have done where I've talked about this book. I'm actually very excited about this new book. It's called In the Marsh. It's kind of a working title. And it is a gothic horror story about a woman who is cheated on by her boyfriend. So she leaves town and she goes to stay in a bed and breakfast kind of not a bed and breakfast, but like a rental, like a Airbnb
Mhm.
in St. Augustine that's on the Matanzas River. It's this big mansiony type house, and it's just her. and the house has secrets, and she is there by herself, and lots of scary things begin to happen to her in this house. And the house itself, the reason it's called In the Marsh, is the house is on it's in like a neighborhood that's very small, that has
Mhm.
homes that border the Matanzas River, which is in St. Augustine. And so you've got the river, but then as you get closer to the homes, a lot of the homes are on marshes. They're not actually directly on the river. So the
Mhm.
marshes are kind of swampy, and it's kind of like quicksand in a way. And so
Okay.
the house is positioned like right on the river, but it's surrounded by marsh land. And let's just say scary and mysterious things ensue to our protagonist. Um, and basically, it's about what happens to her staying in the house. And it's kind of a little bit of a mystery because the people in the neighborhood and the people in that nearby vicinity are involved. And
Mhm.
there's a little girl involved. It's kind of one of those gothic dark horror novel kind of things. But not everybody dies in this one. I'll just say that.
I hope they turn that one into a movie too. Man, your story sounds good. Like, I love them. They
Thank
do.
you.
'Cause I'm really into horror. But what was you mentioning before that? You mentioned something else. I forgot what you mentioned.
Yes. So one of the reasons why there's a couple of reasons why my writing has slowed down. Number one, I've written so many novels that it takes time. You write the story, then you have to edit the story yourself, then you send it to
Mhm.
your publisher, and then your publisher has people who edit it, and then you have to work on cover art. It
Wow.
takes time when you publish through someone else.
Mhm.
And I got really sick last year with COVID. I've had COVID
Mhm.
twice. My
Me
luck.
too.
I'm recovering from bronchitis right now, so three times the charm. Um,
Mhm.
but what happened to me was I released The Island through Crossroads Press. They're wonderful. They released most of my books, and they did a great job, and they are wonderful to work with. Right after that happened, though, I ended up with COVID alpha, which was really bad.
Mhm.
I was basically bedbound. I couldn't
Mhm.
breathe. I had all kinds of and from having COVID yourself,
Mhm.
terrible side effects. And then I
Mhm.
had long COVID after that. So literally 2021 was me recovering from being sick. And then I got the boost, not the booster, just the regular vaccines.
Uh-huh.
And that made me sick on top of having COVID before. Like not terribly sick, but I was sick for about 3 days. So it's kind of like, and then I lost some hair, long COVID, I lost hair that I have a lot of hair, so it's hard to tell, but
Mhm.
the hair loss was really terrible. So the reason
Mhm.
I had to have not written really much since The Island came out was number one, because of COVID.
Mhm.
Number two, I've been focusing on outside projects. So I unfortunately had a project that fell through. I was working with a Belgian director to release my story Stairwell, which is a short story, in
Mhm.
a short film format. But
Mhm.
our actress is from Kyiv, Ukraine. So we were about to get
Mhm.
started this year, and then it just fell through. And
Yeah.
he's in Europe, and it's just with COVID and everything, it just didn't happen. So that unfortunately did not happen. I have another film producer. His name is Duncan Sill. He is working with me on adapting my story Famine, which is also a short story, which was in a book with Clive Barker and John Carpenter, so some pretty big names. They had to
Mhm.
pick the stories, and it was cool. That one's called Famine, and it's about a famine where all the insects in the world just die from a virus, and it's a short story that does involve cannibalism. So
Wow.
that. And Duncan helped create the movie Drunk Town's Finest, which is a film that's out today,
Mhm.
not in the theaters, but was out, and as you can stream it and watch it. And he's really talented and really, really great. And so he and I are working on that together. And then I have some other interest in potentially getting involved in VR and virtual reality
Mhm.
for a series of short stories that I wrote for a thing that we're sort of pitching called Sara Brooke's Nightmares. And I'm working with another group on that. But so I've had kind of my focus sort of veering off a little bit.
Mhm.
But to be honest with you, and as a really wonderful woman I used to work with at another publishing house told me, focus on writing. That is what your passion is, and that's where you create.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm back to. And I am, like I said, I knew we were talking today, and It's like,
Yeah.
I need to get rolling on this in the March business. Oh, and then by the way, as you and I talked about before we started this interview, I got COVID again in December, which
Oh.
was wonderful. I was just saying that so I don't use any bad words. And then I got bronchitis this past week. So it's just been like my health has been a terrible roller coaster. And as someone who has experienced this virus, it does affect you. It does make it hard for you to focus for long periods of time. So that has affected my writing output. But my publisher's like, all right, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm on it. So working on it. Working on it.
Hopefully you come out with a lot more. Like I've been going through your website and seeing a lot of your books, and I'm like, wow, a lot of your books can be movies, and I'm like, these are really good. You're really good.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, I hope you get to read all of them. You know, I mean, it really jazzes me when people are like, I really liked this book. And you know what? It also kind of jazzes me, believe it or not. And I don't read reviews because I do have some people who probably don't like my stories. I know I'm not like a 5-star author. I try not to read reviews because it just depresses me. You know, you put so much effort into your story, and if someone doesn't like it, that's certainly I respect their opinion, but I just don't want to like take it with me and carry it around with me. But I do get a lot of emails from people on Facebook in regular saying, I loved this story. Thank you so much. Can you sign this book for me? Because you know, this is the other thing. I've never done a book signing in all my years of writing.
Really?
Yeah, I have like, I'm shy, believe it or not.
I was gonna buy one of your books and ask you could you sign it and send it to me. Like I'll pay for it, pay for everything first. But
okay, yeah, I'm super happy to do that. And I've actually gone to a few conventions, not for writers, but I've gone for conventions for other stuff, and I have brought books and signed books at other things. But I don't like ever do just like a full-on book signing, and I've been asked like 100 times, and it's not because I think I'm too good for that. No, I would love to do that, but I'm very self-conscious, and I'm very like, okay, well, what if I say the wrong thing? What if somebody comes up to me and is like weird? You know, like I just yeah, but I will. Oh yeah, but I love when people email me and they're like, "Oh, I got your book," or can you sign it and send it back?" I always do that.
Yeah,
so I get a lot of
like anxiety. Like when you get in front of a lot of fans and then your anxiety, you start shaking and sweating and stuff. Yeah, I understand. I understand.
I have really bad anxiety, and I don't know if it's partially because of COVID, because COVID does create a lot of anxiety in long COVID. But I've always had anxiety since I was a child. That's why I like writing and I like reading, because when I'm reading, it's just like my imagination taking me places that, you know, I can just go to. And it is, I do have trouble like going to big loud parties and being in big loud cities and stuff like that. So, but I'd be happy to sign anything you want. Send it over, feel free.
I do have a quick question. Like, dang, I forgot. What advice what advice would you give our listeners who like want to pursue a writing career like yourself?
Oh, I would tell them to absolutely do it. Yes. You know, one of the things that people say to me a lot, like I probably get this once a week. I want to write a book, but I don't know how to do it, and it's so much, you know, so much work. And I agree with that. I agree with all of that. It is a lot of work. It is hard because you'll get started and you'll start rocking and rolling, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I got to go take care of this or that, and then getting back to it is difficult. One of my mentors who passed away, unfortunately, his idea was a great one, and I've used it ever since. His name was Joe McKinney, and he passed away 2 years ago, I think now, maybe a year and a half ago. His idea was, don't try to write like a ton at once. Set a number of words that you are comfortable writing, and set that goal for yourself every day. So you're not going into complete brain freeze, because if you write tens of thousands of words a day and you have a lot of other things going on, at least for me, it's very difficult, and I start to like, my writing starts to go downhill because I'm tired and my brain's starting to lock up and all this. So I write approximately in one sitting, which will surprise you, is only about, or maybe not, it's only about 1,000 words a day, because any more than that, and I start to get brain freeze. But the key is not how many words you write in one sitting. It's writing every day or as many days as you can, even putting it on your calendar And don't worry about editing right away. Just write it. Write the book. Books tend to be about 50,000 words is the limit for how many words you need to have a novel. Some people go 180,000 words. Some people go right at the 50,000. But just write the story. Don't listen to anybody. Stay off social media. Find a very comfortable place to write. Write the story. Take a few days after that or a couple weeks. Work with a really good editor if you can. If you can afford to hire an editor, work with an editor. If you can't, if you're not published by someone else. If you can't afford to hire an editor, ask a good friend or someone else who you trust to read the book for you to see what they think. Did they find any plot gaps? Was there like a mistake in a name that you included? What have you? And edit before you release it. Like edit it, I wouldn't say over edit because some people will edit forever and they'll never release the book. But I would say edit it, enough times where you feel like, okay, I've read it through. I think I've caught everything. I think my editor caught everything or my colleague caught everything. And then it depends on, I would say that if you're not published professionally, there's absolutely nothing wrong with self-publishing. And some people I know who self-publish are doing very well for themselves. So if you self-publish, just keep in mind that you'll be doing the marketing for yourself. So you'll want to market it on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Pinterest, wherever you feel it will help you. My publisher is not big on marketing either. So I still do a lot of Facebook ads and things to get my stories out to people.
Wow. It's going well though. Like it is. I found yours. I was like, oh, this is good because I love horror. And I was like, I have to have her on my podcast.
Well, I'm so glad you did because it like thrills me because it's so hard to find a lot of people these days who actually read, I mean, there's so many ways to get your content. You can get it on Netflix, on I have 1 million streaming channels at my house, I mean, and your people are online and just doing, reading, literally getting a book on your Kindle or God forbid a printed book, which books, I like the feel, the smell of an actual book. It's hard to find people who read. So the fact that who read fiction, I know a lot of people who read nonfiction. They'll read all about, people's life stories, about the wars and famous figures in history, but they don't necessarily read fiction. So we're kind of really like an elite group of people who like this because first you have the fact that you have to be able to read and enjoy it. I mean, you can read, but you know what I mean, like read for fun. Then you have to find people who read fiction and not nonfiction. And then you have to find people who read fiction horror and not romance, although I do write paranormal romance. My Awakening series is paranormal romance. But like straight out like, fiction, romance where the guy's like half dressed and he's like blowing like, or like, John Grisham stuff or whatever. Like you have to find the people who actually like reading scary books. And those are my people. Those are the people I really love. Ones who, they just like the stuff that I like and they like the bizarre and the macabre and strange, kind of stuff. So those are my people.
My one last final question, then I'll let you go. So what is your favorite horror movie?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, actually, there is a favorite, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that is such a cliche, because it kind of is. Actually, I have two, but one's not really a scary movie. Okay, so there's two. My two favorite horror movies, one is more like comedy, mystery, and the other one is flat out horror. My favorite horror movie is The Shining.
Oh, yep.
Yes. And the Stanley Kubrick version, the one that has, Jack Nicholson and, got her name now, but, the one with like, the original from like the late 70s, early 80s. I've seen that probably like, I don't even know. It's embarrassing. I've seen it like 500 times. And I know Stephen King did not like that adaptation. I think it's genius. I love it. I love his book. I think the book was wonderful, but I love that movie. So that's my favorite, like mainstream horror movie. And actually my favorite movie that is sort of scary, mystery, suspense, but not really is Clue from the 1980s.
Really? Wow, I
Yes.
wasn't expecting that one. I
I
watched that one too. I was not expecting that.
know. I don't know. I just love the way it was edited, the way it was written, the fact that you don't know who killed Mr. Body and all those people. And when I saw it in the movie theater, aging me, they actually would show it with different endings. So you'd have like ending C, ending B, ending A. Now you see it and they say, well, could have been this way, might have been this way, but it really was this way at the end when they tell you who killed all the people. But yeah, I love that movie. And there have been other movies that they make based off of the way that movie was put together, like the mystery, and it's kind of it's like comic, it's like dark comedy kind of thing. So that is one of my other favorite movies. But The Shining, really, I find it to be, and I've seen it so many times, but that scene with that woman in the bathtub, oh my gosh, to this day, I still, when I go to other people's houses, I swear I do this. I get to the bathroom and I like pull the shower curtain because I'm so afraid it's gonna open. There's some lady half dressed, naked, her body rotting off her skin, like ugh.
I do that too. I do exactly the same thing. That is a really good movie. I even like Dr. Sleep. That's my favorite one. Dr. Sleep. That was good.
It was really good. It was really, really well put together, really well edited and directed and written. And it was hard for them to do that because the original was so like iconic, and Jack Nicholson is just like amazing and is just such a good actor. So, it would be a dream to have one of my books adapted in that way for film. That would be amazing. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now in partnership with some people in the industry. But I think anyone watching this who is involved in the Hollywood scene knows how difficult it has been since COVID, because COVID, it completely destroyed the industry, because you had to have such high levels of insurance to make sure nobody got sick on the set. And, people were just like, it really destroyed Hollywood for a good couple years now. So, I mean, kudos to the ones who have been able to produce and create, and we really should support them because it's been really hard. But it really affected me too, because here I was thinking I was going to have 2 films out the gate for 2022 or 2023. And it has really hurt the filmmaking industry a lot.
It really has. It really has. I'm glad it's a little bit slowly getting better, but I don't know if COVID will ever be done. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so for the sake of everyone involved, and for you and I who've had it before, and for me who had it twice.
Man.
This week I was so sick. I really hope it dissolves away with all of the vaccines and all the precautions and all of the treatments that people are getting, because it's you would think, this is kind of a weird thing too, Brooke. You would think that because of COVID, I would have written a lot more, like being home a lot. It wasn't like that, because all I was doing was watching television to see what was going on, and I was sick as a dog half the time, so it was rough. It was rough, and it did not make me more creative
at all. And it makes you sleepy too, very fatigued. So you're like falling asleep. Yeah. But I want to thank you so much, Sara, for coming on my podcast today and chatting with me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me anytime. And I hope that you get a chance to check out some of those books. I hope your viewers check them out. And, like I said, if anyone wants them signed, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.